Indeed. 4 for 4. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Failcast F1, second edition of 2020. Happy miserable / Brexit day. Brexit Badger Browse Day. My name is Falkenberg, and alongside me, as always, is the bacon butty extraordinaire, Mr. Zero. How you doing, good sir?
I'm all right. Do you know, I'm just flicking through my calendar, and that holy date is not actually in there. It's like Google haven't even tried.
What do you mean it's not a social media hashtag for the day to celebrate and put in a sponsored post?
No, it's not. Unbelievable. Merry Brexmas Browse Day to you too. Did you have a good week, mate? Has everything been fine? Are you coping well with Brexit?
I have to say, I've not been out of the house since it's happened, so maybe I've become a shut-in recluse. But there was a weird thing. I don't know if it's come out actually on the interwebs, but there was a countdown to 11 o'clock at night here in the UK for a mini weird party, and depending on which channel you was on, depended on like what was going on that station. So, and then Scotland broke out into Auld Lang Syne because they're all sad. But then down in South, Nigel Farage changed the words of Auld Lang Syne to Bye Bye Brexit, and was just drunkenly like screaming off into the distance. It was so bizarre. But the countdown, because obviously it changed at midnight, happened at 11 o'clock in UK time because we had to leave at Brussels time. So yes. I found that very, very hilarious.
I was wondering if you'd attended either of the competing street parties or anything, but it sounds like you've been a bit unwell, and so it hasn't worked for you.
No.
How
about yourself?
Oh my... They're drilling again, mate. They're drilling. I keep thinking I'm paranoid. Like, what are they possibly building in this building? The building is built. I don't get it. They just drill all the time.
Channel extension.
Sorry, I must be coming down off some drugs or something. That was just like a stream of consciousness moment. All good here. I mean, like, people sort of are watching on with a mixture of sadness and bemusement. I mean, I voted Remain, but to be honest, that sort of doesn't really affect me anymore now I've got my visa. I'm trying to be upbeat and chipper about it. I'm trying to be like, yeah, it'll be all right. We'll muddle through. We always muddle through. It'll be fine. Although I did enjoy reading the news articles implying that we would suffer from super gonorrhea, which I thought was a joke. I thought that was like a meme, but it turns out like that was a genuine claim. Like, if Brexit happens, we won't have access to medical research, and we'll get super gonorrhea and super chlamydia and stuff that we can't treat. It's like a genuine claim. So it's good you stayed indoors, mate, and don't play with strangers.
I was going to say, like, have they not been to Essex? It's already here.
It's covered in super gonorrhea in Essex.
Yeah. Crawling in it. I tell you what, they could build runoffs for F1 tracks, and instead of having gravel and artificial runoff or AstroTurf, as I was watching an old retro F1 race, and Martin Brundle was going nuts over the fact that they were AstroTurfing places. And I was like, well, maybe we could just fill it with super gonorrhea. I feel like that could be a good little catch fence.
You got to fill it with something, right?
Yeah, or if you're at Bathurst this weekend, they've been filling up the track with kangaroos. I don't know if you've seen the video that's gone around. They're hopping across the circuit, and then they're getting in the way, and they have to keep red flagging.
Do you know, if there's one thing I've often said, it's that motorsport needs more marsupials. So, totally. I'm wondering if you should go for the softer set of tyres here.
Ooh, I've gone slap bang in the Smids, but Austria's a bit of a gem of a track for me if I can hook it up, so...
Well, see, this is the problem. I've enjoyed Austria every year. And even in its old configuration as the A1 ring, I was quite handy round it.
Yeah.
However, much like with wet weather, in this version of the game, it's all gone to tits, really, and I don't know what I'm doing. First things first, though, let's crack open my Red Bull, which is appropriate given the team.
Yeah.
Oh, that is a refreshing Austrian beverage.
What is the flavour that is out today, or are you gone for tradish?
We've gone for traditional classic for the colour scheme. First things first, though. Let me load Let me load a setup that I made for a Williams several months ago. Haven't fine-tuned at all. I'm going out early. Do you know, why not?
You devil, you.
Why not treat myself? It'd be good to get my eye in.
Oh, it's going to be changeable conditions in the race, though, going from dry to wet to dry.
Oh, no. All right, then start on soft tyres, really.
Yeah,
That's what we've learned there. That's what we've learned there. Start on the softest possible tyre.
So like farming in
Makes
the softy.
qualifying easier, at least. Now, I forgot, but I won last time out, didn't I, in France?
You did indeed.
I conquered France. However, you are king of the hill by quite some way. I'm hoping, no offence, that you have a difficult Austria, mate.
Well,
I'll be honest with you.
It could be, given how explosive my bows on both ends have been for the last couple of days, that I might have to put it on pause whilst I run and sort myself out mid-race. So God knows what the AI will be doing when I'm about. It'll probably act much more competent than what it is when I'm in the wheel myself.
Well, I mean, you may go through less wings. I think that's the main thing.
No, not unless I've popped a tampon in.
This is such an educational podcast. I love it. So the big, major, main news topics, I was thinking we could save for the race. You know, be a bit, be a bit proper, like. But still plenty of other stuff to talk about.
Been quite interesting.
Something that has leapt up on the old radar, though, is I want to talk to you, and I never normally want to talk about this. Formula One teams and social media, because they've all got a bit handy with it, haven't they? I don't know if you've been paying attention to McLaren in particular, but they've been like doing all the behind the scenes MacGuffins, firing up the engine, tours of the wind tunnel, all that kind of stuff. Like, I don't know, but I don't know, what's happened to traditional F1, but I'm liking this F1, the one that doesn't secretly hate its fans.
Completely
it's
agree.
nice, like having the doors open for you and being able to see, like, this is how we do things and so on. I mean, they've always tried to some extent to include the fans, but it's never really worked, has it?
No.
Hello there, Beetlejuice.
And hello, Manor, as well. Hope you are both well. No, I completely agree. And this, to me, is a bit of the Liberty Media effect, where I think they had to do it on their own channel first before like others would come on board, because everyone's like a bit reticent. And McLaren are onto a winner because of how Lando Norris is just a walking meme machine. So I think, so long as they kind of keep that. But I remember you saying, I think it was last episode, where he's like, but just don't make it too false. There has to be like a bit of a line of it still feeling authentically them. And I'd also say, from the McLaren point of view, it's also a Zach Brown effect and the calming down of a post-Ron Dennis era. Yeah, they got sloppy and they all decided that they wanted to eat like Trumpian McDonald dinners. And then once Zach Brown realised that he couldn't be an incomplete slob, now they've kind of flipped the other way again. And I think they found a happy medium. And I noticed as well that our little team, Toro Rosso, were deciding to use thinky face emoji in their latest video as well, and that surprised me. So yeah, it's good to see.
And the explosion.
Yes.
I agree, Beetlejuice. Fernando was also a meme machine, but yes, for very different reasons.
That is true.
Yeah, I think you want your drivers to be memes that are sort of positive about the team, not just mocking you the entire time.
Yeah.
But actually, that's a nice segue into another thing I want to talk about, because I didn't want to spend too much time on the social media thing. I just wanted to give a shout out to the teams for making a bit of extra effort, and I think Formula One management is and Liberty Media is somewhat responsible for that, given the success of Drive to Survive, which is out this month.
Yeah, season 2, 28th of Feb. Can't wait for that and see just exactly how many gaskets Gunter Steiner explodes.
That's the only reason anyone wants to watch it, I think. Like, we all just want to see Gunter Steiner. We want to see Haas fall apart in front of our eyes like a mouldy cake. I'm so desperate for it. Yeah, I want to see like the process of how he ended up not firing Roman Grosjean again. Because like, if you watch the last season back, I watched it when my dad was here not too long ago. I watched it with him. I made it through the whole season. And it's even more ridiculous when you watch it back now, because the whole season is everybody mocking Grosjean, like even other teams mocking him. Like my favourite bit was it Jonathan Neal at McLaren who said, bet you Grosjean off first corner, and then that's exactly what happens.
Oh yeah.
And they just like capture this snippet before the race kicks off, and then he actually does bin it at the first corner, and I was like, ah. And all the way through, like when they have the dinner party and they deliberately don't invite Roman Grosjean, I said when he wins points he can come to dinner and things like that. And then at the end of all this, he still has a job. What the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
I agree, Beetlejuice. Grosjean must have serious dirt on Steiner or Gene Haas. However, I shouldn't be throwing stones in glass houses, because I've just realised that I've gone out for my first run in quali carrying 11 laps of surplus fuel. For no reason that I can think of. I have no idea why that fuel's in there. I do not need 13 laps of fuel.
Ballast for my moobs.
Yeah, that is not necessary.
Wow. Yeah, no, I'll be going back through Drive to Survive before Season 2 comes out. That's what I normally do. I'll do like a quick revisit. Feel very sad for the fact that some drivers are about and some aren't. Then
they were all filmed, I believe, and then they've cut Lewis out.
Oh, I didn't realise he'd cut himself back out again.
Yes, I thought we talked about this actually. This was a big deal to me. This really annoyed me.
Because I thought that they were back in. I thought that everyone was in for Season 2.
Everyone was in for Season 2, and Ferrari is still in, I believe. They filmed with Mercedes, but then I heard that... Initially I heard Mercedes weren't going to be in it, and then someone else is saying just Lewis isn't in it. I don't know what the truth is, because obviously it's not out yet. And Mercedes Twitter made some kind of joke about it, which sounded like they were still in, but... The official story, the last official story I read about it, was in Autosport, and they implied that at the very least Lewis wasn't in it, that the footage of him was removed.
Oh, for goodness sake.
And incidentally, it seems to be the decision was taken somewhere around the German Grand Prix, which means at the German Grand Prix, when he made a dick of himself and crashed into the wall. And I'm wondering, call me cynical, but I suspect those two events may very well be related.
That would not surprise me at all, because then it wouldn't be him showing his best light to #fans. And if maybe he was a bit rageful and they caught it and he didn't like showing off that side, he's one of those people, especially since he's on a bit of a mental health, physical health, well-being, #Jesus vest these days. Maybe he doesn't want to put out a contradiction view, but that's a bit of a shame in a way, because he could have used that as a, do you know what, we've all had a shit day and get back up again, and still kind of done a teammate LH diatribe bollock best. There's ways you can run about it, and that's a shame.
Do you know what? I think you've just figured it out. Because it always struck me as odd that even if it was over just one event, why did they cut him out entirely? Why was the request to cut him out entirely? And I think you've just figured it out. Hypocrisy. I bet after every session he tucks into the biggest Big Mac you've ever seen, and then everyone knows his plant-based diet is bullshit, and he's realised that he's been caught.
Maybe they went along to a KFC sponsorship deal. Sean Galeo in the background offering him wings, and he just couldn't say no.
Just him and a bunch of American rappers, because he's trying to kickstart his music career, just tucking into a bucket of wings.
Yeah.
That'll be what it is.
everyone down that maybe that's the weekend
TGI Fridays.
Done the Mega Meat Challenge. Oh, that would be hilarious. Maybe that was the weekend where he was recording his debut single or something, and then that's the only time that he crashed off. So then it implies that he didn't have his eye on the ball or something stupid.
I mean, originally I thought it was because of Niki Lauda's death and because of Valtteri Bottas's messy divorce, but it's just the way I've been hearing about it. It just seems very, very Lewisy. It just seems very Lewisy. That was a beautiful lap, sir, if you don't mind me saying so.
Bit naughty under some track limits, perhaps, but yes, thank you very much. This is literally the only track where I seem to have like the perfect setup and it works exactly how I want to. So if there was ever a race that I was going to do well at, it would be this one.
I love the circuit. I'm just no good at it.
What was I going to say?
But actually, what I wanted to talk about was, look at that, I'm second, and I'm still like 9/10 off you. That was a hell of a lap you pulled out.
Oh, you're up there. 1-2 for
Bravo,
TR.
I'd clap if I wasn't on one hand holding the accelerator down and the other holding a can of Red Bull.
Priorities.
But before we got derailed by Haas and Drive to Survive, what I actually wanted to talk about, Beetlejuice dropped his name, Mr. Fernando Alonso.
Oh.
Big news this week. He did a very lengthy interview with a few news outlets, actually. I saw him everywhere. It was Fernando Week. I couldn't get away from the bastard. He was on BBC, he was on Autosport, he was in Autocar, he was on Crash.net, he was like a whole bunch of places were covering him from different aspects. But there was an interview, I think BBC did one, and then Autosport did one as well. And he was talking about how he's definitely coming back in 2021.
Yeah.
But he'll only come back to a good team. And what I was surprised about, actually, is in both cases the journalists were like making excuses for him. Makes me wonder if they know something we don't, because they were saying, well, many people say he'd never get a seat at Mercedes or Ferrari now, and it would be, I just hope to God the door's closed at McLaren. And honestly,
I think it would be.
The only way he'll be back in at a top team is if some serious monkey business was going on. I mean, like serious string pulling.
The only way how I can see him back in is if Mercedes are going. Because then... But again, this kind of is an interesting one, because if Mercedes go... because there's also been reports about... There's been a snag in Lewis Hamilton's contract negotiations. And
yes.
So...
Which he denies, but please continue.
Yeah, so... If Mercedes are going to stick about, they're not going to want to pay £40 million a year for him. But then I won't see them wanting to pay £40 million for Alonso as well, unless Alonso has come back so tail between his leggy, behind closed doors, or who won't say that outwardly, and say, do you know what? With a cost cap coming in, I don't feel like you should be able to justify paying £40 million for Lewis Hamilton when you've had to let go of all of these people. I'll do it for 12 or something like that. They see a massive gain in money, keeps Mercedes in for another couple of years, and he thinks he can wander back into a top team. That's about the only way I can see it swinging, because Alonso is so politically minded that it would have to be in a way that would underhandedly push one of those people out. And I can only... Because you won't go back to... It won't be a Red Bull seat, because they won't take someone from outside of their driver programme.
According to Helmut Marko, they won't take half the people in the driver programme. He's such a dick.
That is true. Ferrari... why would they go back? So it can only really be a Mercedes. Bottas may fly out the window, but then they've got to pay two massive salaries, and for a team that we think are trying to shrink down and disappear in grace, they're not going to want to pay out that dosh.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. In my heart, I sort of don't see them pulling out, but it is a very real risk. The board meeting is this month.
Yeah.
To decide their future. They're saying all the right things to the media, and they're all denying that there's a problem with Lewis's contract. Toto was saying, we have no plans to pull out, but there's no guarantees, which is a very odd sentence. And I think what makes sense from a business point of view is to save the money, which they desperately need to do, leave on a high, take all the championship wins. Mercedes-Benz HPE would stay open and be selling racing engines to the other teams and sell the team off. And part of me could see them doing it. I'm not entirely sure. The Formula E thing threw a spanner in the works for me, but then Toto Wolff said some pretty disparaging things about Formula E this week that made me disappointed in him. He said it's toy cars with real drivers. Which, makes him sound a little bit bitter that his team can't just walk away with every championship there. Yes,
go and learn what your wife's doing. It's interesting because you've got for me, I know we started off with an early joke about it, but there is also the Brexit negotiations in the background, and these teams are all based in the UK, so I think they're hedging their bets slightly with what happens economy-wise. And internally inside UK government, quite a lot of our conversations are talking about what happens to the next recession when it hits. So clearly there is like chills in the water. So I think a lot of people, particularly when it's coming up, and I'm not blind to the fact that no one signed up to the 2021 and beyond Concord agreement either. That's the one.
It is a concrete agreement, though. You are correct.
Yeah. So any way that they can make themselves sound that they could waver while still saying that they're committed, because they've got to walk this fine line between not driving people away to look elsewhere because they think that they're going to walk, but they're also going to be outwardly like swinging to try and get people to sway internally on an agreement that they may want to tweak some things into their way. So there's so many different layers. It's like one of those massive like Russian dolls turned into a cake. So that you've got all of this layers of shit on top of each other trying to like push through, and it's just a highly political game. And it's no wonder that like Liberty Media and Co have taken so long to try and get through some of these layers, to go, do you know what, this is what the rules are that we're trying to jump to, shut the fuck up and sign up, Liz.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing's very, very, very fraught at the moment, because they're not exactly... What's happened to your machine?
No, Vettel out in Q1, sorry.
Oh, yeah, no, the Ferraris were really struggling. I saw they were down in 12 and 13 on their last laps, and everyone else seemed to be going faster.
Cray. Oh well, bye Ferb.
Yeah, laters. No, what I was going to say, it's a very fraught situation right now. They're obviously not attracting in the engine manufacturers that they wanted. And, Mercedes are not the only team whose future is under some form of discussion. Renault too are making a decision very soon regarding their long-term future in the sport. For them, it's a much harder sale because their engines don't have any customers either. And the guy who signed off on this program is a guy who famously enriched himself in the process. Mr. Beetlejuice, you have raised one of our key topics of the day, and during the race we have much to say on this matter. We're going to play a fun game with you as well, but you've touched on a very important point there, because Force India badge Stroll eyebrows are indeed using Mercedes powertrains, and there's much shenanigans possible with the way cards are falling into position right now. I think it's going to be a very interesting few months the first half of the season, because that's when all the pieces will fall into place for 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it was an F3 race in 40 minutes. Damn it, Simon, we need to be more organised. Didn't even realise.
F3?
Right. Yeah.
Where?
No. Oh, Beetlejuice is driving in an F3 race. Like, I guess an online one. We need to have like a group calendar.
Okay.
So we can avoid this. Right, he's got 40 minutes. We will definitely cover that topic in the next 40 minutes. In fact, we'll do it in Q3, just for you.
Ah. Don't say we don't give out things for BJ.
Exactly. That quote could be taken very much out of context.
Like most things that come out of my mouth.
I haven't quite adjusted to you in the 10 years we've been doing this. It's never quite sunk in.
That's what she said. Sorry.
That's what she said. I'm going out on the harder tyres first to see if I can find a little pace somewhere on the track, and then I'll blitz it on the soft tyres because it's going to rain and I don't want to be on the slow tyres.
Okay.
In the dry period, because I'm going to be very bad in the wet, especially on this track because it's so windy windy. Hello there.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, so bringing it round so we can move on to the Force India Badger Stroll segment of the show. All of these political things kind of tie into Fernando's decision making, because the core of the articles were, number one, he's adamant he's coming back. Number two, he's adamant he's coming back in a good team. And three, he's deciding what a good team is. So he was talking about the mistakes he's made in the past when trying to identify which teams were going to be in the ascendancy. I sort of, in the pit of my stomach, kind of think, I think he was right about which teams were in the ascendancy. He just broke that by being Nando.
Agree. Because
however,
look at how they all ascend once he leaves.
Yeah, he's got a touch of the Rubens Barrichello about him, hasn't he?
Maybe that's what's made me ill.
You've got a bad case of the Rubens, I'm afraid. So I'll be interested to see if some kind of deal is done. I mean, part of me did think the Red Bull door was open at one stage because they were having meetings, and he admitted in this article that he'd had meetings with Helmut Marko, Dietrich Mateschitz and Christian Horner over the years about moving to Red Bull. He said Red Bull denied it the whole time, but it did happen, and they were talking about Nando to Red Bull. Obviously, it never happened. And maybe it did happen, but he got fired before he left the room. But he never turned a wheel in anger.
Mateschitz decided that he would never amount to anything. That Spaniard.
Yeah, you can't trust them. And so, for me, I just really can't see a door opening for him that is competitive, unless, like we say, he's playing some genius political game.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, I think it would be bad for the sport.
I hate to say it, I'm done with Nando in F1, and I don't need him in F1 to make me feel like F1 is big huge again. We've got plenty of new upcoming stars. There's only 20 spots. I'm taking a leaf out of your book and basically saying, time now, fellas, off you go.
Yeah, time's time, cop.
Yep.
Beetlejuice raises an excellent point here. There's not enough pace in that Spaniard. It's time to call Alexander Wurz. I'd just like to add, it's always time to call Alexander Wurz.
Or Pedro de la Rosa, please. Let's get the ultimate Spaniard who doesn't die back.
Do you remember when he came back?
It was delightful.
Oh,
delightful.
Peter Sauber brought Sauber back, and then there he was, and then he popped up again at HRT.
Yes, 2 years of gloriousness.
I'm very, very slow. I did mess up my lap a bit, but I'm no longer carrying excess fuel, so I don't know why on the same tyres you're first and I'm 13th, but this is the world we're living in.
Where are you?
I'm just coming into the pit. I'm going to swap to the faster tyres. I'm going to try again.
It's all it's mostly sector 2, but it's
Yeah, I think I misjudged some braking points and lost a lot of time there. It'll be fine. It'll be right. We'll figure it out.
We'll reach in the night.
So, why don't we? Grand Prix World. Pedro Diniz does mutate into the next coming of Senna. He's super OP in most of my playthroughs, actually, and that's why I love him so much. I'm like the world's biggest Diniz fan. He now runs a chain of supermarkets.
Does he sell microwave Diniz?
Oh well, if he doesn't, he should. Those would walk out themselves, and he could use the Sun newspaper headline
Diniz in the oven
as so good.
Back when journalism was grand, and actually quickly on that, just for us to talk about motorsport journalism, good luck to all of the people that have left autosport on the huge exodus / reopening of something called The Race, where loads of the people from, like 3 or 4 people from the autosport team, because essentially it all got shut down and is all like a bit half dead now, have now gone over to create The Race. But they joined with the YouTube channel called Let's Go Racing, and that's the people that have license to do Super Formula. So that was where I used to go to watch those races live at like 2 or 3 in the morning, and they were doing it in a weird like webcast way where they're all back in the UK and they've got someone in Japan down at the ground like shouting at them what's going on in a race. So it's a bit like ramshackle, but like the premise and the ability to do it is there. So it's great because they're getting all of these weird and wonderful contracts with different series that you just wouldn't be able to watch anywhere else otherwise. So I'm really intrigued to see where it goes, and I want to wish them all the best, especially because they've had a few jobs out, and I nearly applied for some of them.
That's actually really good news. I didn't know about that. I'm pleased you mentioned it because I'm an Autosport subscriber, and I had thought it had got a bit toshed lately. That may be an explanation as to why, and so I need to make the switch. Also, I feel I should add, even though it reflects badly on me, that when you were talking about Super Formula and having someone shouting at them about what's going on, I got a very un-PC image of the Asian parents from Family Guy in my mind. Like, why do you know Will Buxton? Will Buxton big and famous, you know?
Amazing.
But yeah, I haven't watched much Super Formula, but if I can, I will. And yeah, I respect a lot of the journalists who do work at Autosport. I think it's super if they're finding a new home where they can do their own thing. So yeah, good luck to all of them. Okay, moving on. So the big news this week has been one that we were actually talking about 3 weeks ago when we were last live.
Oh yeah.
The what was at the time the rumor of the holy eyebrowed one's dad purchasing into a certain premium British sports car manufacturer, and them switching their sponsorship allegiance to his team, the now ubiquitous Aston Martin, Force India, Badger Eyebrow, Stroll, Racing Point,
Sport Pezza,
Canada. Sport Pezza. Yeah.
Oh,
Canada Light.
Canada.
Yeah, that's the official team name. The trucks are very long, and a lot of people were saying that they didn't buy into it. They didn't see it as viable. But I think we all underestimated exactly how far Big Daddy Stroll would go for his baby boy.
And how deep those pockets are. I tell you what, you could chuck half of Africa in there by the sounds of it. Amazing.
Yeah. I mean, he's a billionaire, so that obviously helps. But do you get the feeling like, I think part of this, because like, what's in it for them? This is what I was thinking. What's in it for them? Because they're not getting a new engine out of this. Basically, they're just getting to rename the team and paint it a different colour and drape themselves in the reputation and legacy of Aston Martin. So either it's because he wants his son's F1 record to include a big name because it was never going to otherwise, or he's realised that Racing Point is the worst name for a racing team ever conceived.
Yes.
And their logo looks like a nipple.
Both of which are valid reasons to change your name.
Yeah, and they were in a board meeting and they were like, shit, guys, we boxed ourselves in here. This name's garbage. What are we going to do? It's embarrassing my son. I mean, aside from the eyebrows and the driving stuff, we need to do something. And then they've realised Aston Martin are struggling and he's bought into them. And because basically he's sponsoring himself. He's buying a car company to sponsor himself.
Mm-hmm.
And you suggested we play a game earlier today.
Yes.
Which obviously we'd like to invite chat into, which is, how far will motorsport dads go for their kids? Now, up until now, I would argue that the title goes to either Esteban Ocon's dad or Lewis Hamilton's dad for essentially living in poverty and starving themselves half to death to get their son to F1. However, none of them, I have to say, have bought an ailing legacy sports car manufacturer just to sponsor the team they bought for their son. Like that is next level stuff. So discuss what are your thoughts on this whole deal, and how far would you go for your son?
Wow, just before I do, Manor in the chat says, surely would the name not bring in better sponsors too? And I think there is something about that. The problem is that Williams have cornered this market already, although we've said this before in previous years, they should have done it better. Because, especially when they had the Martini sponsorship, there was a whole James Bond thing going on, which I now feel like they're trying to go for with, I don't know, Eyebrow Bond. Maybe you could just get like one of those fuzzy furry like shotgun mics and just like have it in like a weird cartoon Pixar movie doing James Bond shit in an Aston Martin. Hey Lance Bond. No, I wouldn't. I think the deal is weird. Because it was funny. I was charting back this team's history. So you've got it would then be Aston Martin, Racing Point, Force India, Midland, Jordan.
Spiker, Midland, Jordan.
Oh shit, yeah, I forgot Spiker. 07, yeah, good shout. And you just kind of think, I wonder if it's the start of another like swing of changes around, because for me the idea was that, and I don't know if it's I think it's a positive, but it's the third like name change in as many years, and like quote unquote takeovers, which to me does not scream stability. And I was hoping that we would start to see shoots of green coming through for the team towards the end of this year when the money was coming through. I don't know, and I don't really have an attachment to Aston Martin for it to mean anything to me unless it's in a GT car. So for me, it doesn't feel like it's a real thing.
I kind of agree with you on that. I do sort of more associate them with GT racing, and for good reason. I am loving the idea of a British racing green car again.
Yes,
and also on a actually British team, not like some Malaysian cowboy outfit that tried to steal Lotus's name as well. I mean, yeah, Lance Stroll's Canadian, of course, but at least the team's firmly established in British motorsport law, even though it was founded by an Irishman. What a tangled web we weave. For me, I agree with Beetlejuice, first of all, that the increased prestige, better sponsorship attraction, and increase of merchandise sales probably speaks for itself.
Yep.
And it does tie into the idea that Racing Point is just an embarrassing name.
Mm-hmm.
On what you said, I completely agree. Historically, teams changing names and brand frequently has never ever been a good sign of anything good happening, even when it involves more money. Because I think there's a tendency to not just change the colours and the signs above the door. People feel the need to stamp the name on things properly.
Absolutely. And it takes you back to the beginning of the development loop again, doesn't it? Because you'd have thought with... I can't see Lance Stroll... I've forgotten... What's Papa's name? Daddy?
Lawrence.
That's it. I knew it was something.
We'll call him Daddy Stroll. I think that's what he likes to be called, to be honest.
Daddy. It's funny because in the homosexual world, if you fancy a straight guy and he's got a baby, then you call him Daddy Stroller Meat if he's got a dad bod. So that means a completely different connotation. And no, I wouldn't.
Hey, he might be an open-minded guy. Look, just take him by the arm, suggest it over a wine or something. You never know.
Maybe there's a 2021 calendar mix-up where it's Daddy Stroll draped over Aston Martins, very confused. Some lady stroking his eyebrows. It's God, I was ill before. So for me, you're right. When someone comes in and stamps their authority, they don't change the name. Then it's like, I want my guys in, and then it takes them back again. And I don't think Senior Stroll would be someone that would, if you're pumping in that amount of money, yes, you might kind of leave the team because they're very efficient with what they do, but you might want to put in stuff to help them manage with that expansion back to being a full running spending team to understand where to grow and where not to grow. Because if you work in a efficient mentality, you only know what you know, if that makes sense. So you might need someone to help you expand from that kind of thing. Changing the name, bringing in more people again, making it more convoluted, potentially has them to go all the way back to the beginning of that path again, and then it's just another couple of years of them being midfielders waiting to get back forward again. And for me, last time we had British Green in where it actually meant something was Jaguar in 2000 buying out Stewart, and they lasted 4 years of that pissing about because there was too many bored people in putting their fingers in all of the pies. And they never moved forward until they became Red Bull, and even then it took them another few years of restructuring to move forward and get it again. So for me, when that happens,
it becomes about car sales.
I
think because the money coming from, like, he's put 168 million into buying Aston Martin, majority share. And then that money is presumably, to some degree, being spent on the sponsorship arrangement, and it's crazy. Beetlejuice, though, is a psychic, because he just raised the point that I was thinking, which is what happens if he intends to run a team much longer than his son is around. And that's a very interesting point, right? Because for me, like, if I had that kind of money and I was going to the trouble of buying an F1 team, right, I'd want to. And I was genuinely passionate about it, and I don't want to just say he's doing this solely for his son.
No,
right?
he has to be passionate about it.
I'm sure that's the primary reason, but I don't think it's the only reason, right? And I'd want my name over the door, right? I'd want it to be a proper privateer feeling team. I'd want to, and they've been scared off doing that because everybody already believes that he's bought the team for his son, right? And if you have, you know, the commentators, here's Lance Stroll driving for Lance Stroll Racing. You know, like the only time, I mean, you've had the Brabham family, right? And David Brabham drove for Brabham. But that didn't have the same connotation to it. First of all, because Brabham was already a respected name in motorsport, and rightly so.
Yeah.
But also, he hadn't bought his way in, and I didn't get the sense he was there only because of who his family was, and he drove for other teams.
No, and it wasn't his dad's name above the door making the pays when that happened, if that made sense as well. So there was like no massive direct association.
Precisely. So it had a bit more credibility, and they're so scared about this damaging Lance's credibility and his career legacy, and I honestly think that's the reason that Daddy Stroll can't put his name on the team, right? And assuming he doesn't just want to sell the team as soon as his son leaves, and I honestly don't think that he does, then I suppose this is a logical next step. If you can't name it yourself, then, you know, take over Aston Martin and build a legacy that way, like revitalise Aston Martin into something else.
Yeah.
And to go back a little further onto something else you said, I'm still upset and angry even about the former management of Aston Martin because a few years back, as we said at the time, Williams was covered in all these classy, smelling of leather and spaniels, British sponsors. Plus, they had Martini, and Jenson Button was on the market, and rumours were interested in at least dabbling at Williams a little bit.
Yep.
And then they sponsored Red Bull. That's carrying another car manufacturer's name on both occasions. Like they didn't even get engine naming rights when it was Renault.
No, it was bizarre.
And they could have paid to rebadge those Mercedes units so easily. Mercedes don't give a shit. They've got a works team. They don't need the And can you imagine like Martini, Aston Martin, Williams with Jenson Button? Like, it just writes itself.
Oh
yeah. It just does. It would have been amazing, but now we've been robbed of it.
Damn you.
But my overall analysis is that this is probably long term a good thing. I think I agree with you, Simon. There's probably going to be some short term upset during what will presumably still be a period of transition that they're in after his purchase altogether. And I think that's natural. Like I say, I don't think you can resist sort of putting your stamp on things and doing things your way. You'll always bring some of your own work ethic and management style to any project you involve yourself in. And it's a shame in a way because the one team that really didn't need a change to how it was run was Racing Point, Force India. What they needed was money, and money provided by someone who wasn't wanted in about 18 countries for fraud. So, really, if he'd come in and been super hands-off, it would have been okay. And what worried me, actually, was before he even got the team back on an even footing, they'd announced, like, a huge new factory.
Yeah.
And that did set an alarm bell ringing for me. Like, not because it comes from ill intention or it comes from a place of incompetency or anything like that. Like, I still overall think his purchase of the team was a good thing. And if Lance Stroll having a permanent seat is the price we pay for that in the sport, then fine. I'm fine with paying that price.
Yeah.
But I think it just showed a lack of awareness somehow as to quite the scale of the task ahead of him. That his first idea was, well, this factory was built by Eddie Jordan in 1990 and we need to get rid of it. And I want to build, a fancy campus and stuff. And, I don't want to bash him for his willingness to invest in the team. The worst thing that can happen is a rich person buy a team and then underfund it, and it's just sort of a prestige plaything for him, which, has Caterham.
I was thinking exactly the same.
And
Lotus, to be fair.
Yeah, Team Lotus that wasn't. Like, what I love about that period of Formula One, as ridiculous as it is to look back on, is that him using the name Lotus incensed actual Lotus so much that they entered the sport for the first time since 1993 or whatever it was. Like, they had to actually dip into their own pockets and sponsor a car because they didn't want him having a monopoly on their name. Like, that's how petty it is.
Oh dear. Well, I just buggered up my second qualifying lap because I didn't realise I wasn't running on the right fuel mixture.
Happens to the best of us. Do you remember the good old days when I would do qualifying laps and forget that?
Oh yeah.
Forget to use the KERS.
Yeah. Fucking cars. I'm glad we don't have to deal with that in this game anymore.
I'm much more disciplined with the DRS.
One interesting side note of this Force India Badger Stroll stuff is our favourite taco extraordinaire. Can he hang on to that seat long enough for that team to get into prominence? And wouldn't that be a lovely little redemption arc if they do come back? After all those years of wilderness and being dumped by McLaren for basically being a bit argy-bargy-fied and in the fallout of the McLaren takeover years, it would be nice to see that if that team did come up in ascendancy, if he was still around with it, because he has been instrumental in keeping that team afloat and alive and kind of forging how it becomes for them to then take over and make it big.
F1 doesn't tend to provide those kind of feel-good stories.
No.
And so when they do, they feel all the more special. I'm thinking Braun in 2009, for example. Mm-hmm. I think Checo deserves his time in the spotlight. I genuinely do. I've blown hot and cold on Sergio over the years, but I've developed quite an affection for him the last few, even though I think the whole thing with him and Ocon made me lose respect for both of them.
Yes.
I would definitely be inclined to say that I think the team will find its footing as long as the majority of the staff are still in place, because they always have. And now they've got the money to possibly even break into the top three long term. The question, particularly if Mercedes stop running their own team and just become an engine supplier, then there's no reason why they'd be in any way impaired in sort of stepping up a notch, as long as the engines are still developed. But I sort of don't see them as credible for the Constructors' Championship simply because of the drag factor of Lance Stroll. And I'm not like an outright Lance Stroll hater. You and I defended him pretty vociferously in his debut season and his second season. And I'm still inclined to defend him now. Like, he's good enough to be in F1. I don't think there's much argument that he's not. But he's a make-up-the-numbers driver with the best will in the world. He's a make-up-the-numbers driver. And I don't see him doing anything that I don't think Marcus Ericsson could do 100% more Swedishly.
That is a measure that I am going to adopt now, at least on a weekly scale.
Yeah, and plus, Ericsson has the gun show, so we've been robbed on two fronts, really. The eyebrow wrangler is no match for the Swedish gun show, and
that'd be an interesting one to think of in general, is that if they did come into prominence, he can only get that team to a position where Stroll then needs to do the rest. Wouldn't it be weird if, like, every race they would have to continually manufacture the point that Stroll has to try and win as many times as possible, and they're like, oh, that pit stop, that sticky wheel, and all of that. It would be an absolute hilarity farce for the entire season if he was able to do it.
He can always call up Gunter Steiner for tips on defending an undefendable driver. That's the thing, right? If the team ever did get to a point where Lance was the reason that they were no longer progressing, that's when you really find out where his priorities lie.
Yeah.
Oh, it's quite an interesting field. George Russell up in 8th for some reason.
I spotted that earlier. I was like, what?
I shouldn't laugh too hard, given that we're at a race with all Toro Rosso front row.
Hey.
Interestingly, I might have better traction off the line because I'm on softer tyres.
Yes, you will. You will.
Sneaky beaky. For me, in summary, optimistic about the whole thing. I will be purchasing some of the merchandise because I'm a merchandise lover. Yeah, that's the word.
Especially with your newfound craze of buying all of these die-cast little models.
Yeah.
You've got an addiction there, mate.
Mini champs are still the king, but I bought some from some other manufacturers, and they're very, very nice to have. I've never been a collector in my life ever. In fact, I've always sort of done the correct thing and kind of bullied people who collect things. But I have to concede that there's something satisfying about having them there, all lined up. Because I've also I've only really taken cars that mean something to me, like from races I remember or teams I had a fondness for. So like I've got the Pacific PR2, the Arrows FA18, the Arrows A23, the Tyrrell 018. I'm going to have the Minardi PSO1 soon, I hope. Well, that's the next stage, Beetlejuice. There will become a time where it's like, I must have them all. I saw the other day that, I think it's a Minardi PSO2, you can buy like a diorama of a 1/18 scale car, which is a lot bigger than the ones I have.
Oh, wow.
With a complete pit crew, and it's like a pit stop diorama.
Oh, wow.
And I saw it and I was like, oh, I want it. I want it really bad, but I'm not allowed it because it's a ridiculous waste of money.
Okay. Good luck.
Good luck. Let's try to not hit each other. I think that would be a good goal for the start of this Grand Prix.
Okay.
No, we hit each other anyway.
No, that was Verstappen hitting you.
Yeah, and now I've been hit by someone else.
Oh, God. Can we... Oh, we can't restart, can we?
No.
Fuck's sake.
What a ridiculous start to this Grand Prix.
Oh, virtual safety car.
And my front wing is knacked.
Hopefully the virtual safety car will mean you can pit and play. So the latest patch, version 1.20, has basically said that if there is a car stuck in the middle of the track, they will VSC it much more now. So that could play to our advantage. I've tried to stack everyone up a bit. I hope that was helpful.
No.
Oh no, not judging by that map.
No, I'm very, very far behind. Very, very far behind. I don't think it's recoverable, to be honest, given that I have to stop again even if I stop now.
Fucking hell, Bottas.
That was quite a lap. I'm really annoyed at that start.
Did we I didn't feel you touch me.
No, we didn't touch. You gave me plenty of space, but I had Verstappen on the outside and I think it was Bottas on the right side, and I broke early to try and avoid a collision because I knew Verstappen would turn across me, and he did. But then, as we came out the corner, he braked on the exit of the corner, so I ran into the back of him, and then Bottas hit me on the side, and it just spun me round. And then I got hit by a Force India while I was trying to get back onto the track, and that spun me round again. And now I'm miles down the back.
Bottas has just put me off as well, so... And Magnussen in second? What is going on with this game?
We have no luck this season.
I'm good. We're going to do this.
And I'm losing a lot of time now because the car won't hold in fast corners, so I have to come off the accelerator on corners that normally I could take flat.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me think I should pit. And get the pain out of the way. But I don't know. I don't know.
Maybe.
But then again, while I'm setting fastest laps, maybe it's better to just stay out and run with it.
Weather report. Rain is a few laps out yet. Thanks, Jeff, for that. Not very.
Yeah, super helpful, Jeff, you dick. It was supposed to start raining at exactly the moment I needed to pit for my tyres, which means I would pit for softs. Sorry, mediums as it is now. I would pit for mediums and then suddenly find myself having to come in 3 laps later to change to winters. Because reasons.
Boom. Anyway, so, like, things I would do are 5 minutes until the rain falls, apparently. Things I would do to get my son into an F1 championship. I would probably comb Chase Carey's tash daily.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I actually quite enjoy that. It looks a very combable Tash.
There's an ASMR mass video waiting to happen with Ryan.
I would heat up Ted Kravitz's meat and potato pies.
That is exactly what I would see him eating as well.
Yeah. Well, that's what he's doing. Like every time he's not on camera, but you hear him in the pits. You know that he's just put down a fork and a meat and potato pie that's still in like the silver foil tray.
Mm-hmm.
It's like fresh out the oven, and he's affronted that you've ruined his lunch to ask him like what tyre strategy Bottas is on.
He does spirographs with the Frey Bentos tins.
I love a good spirograph. Now I'm getting nostalgic. All this talk of models of Pacific PR2s and spirographs. I was going to say something more about those models, actually. What was I going to say? Oh, that was right. So, as I've been ranting to you for about a month now, Simon, I bought some shares in NIO, the Chinese car company, and Formula E team. Interesting that I doubled my money, more than doubled my money actually, which is lucky because that was the first time I've ever invested in anything, and it was a pure guess. But because they made me a bit of money, I bought a Mini Champs model of their car from last season. And I have to say, up until now, I've only had F1 models, but the Formula E models from Mini Champs are superb. And because of the Gen 2 car looking so awesome, it may actually be the best looking car in my collection now, even though the livery is pretty milquetoast.
Nice.
And I have ordered a LMP1 model to add to my collection. Which I got for the princely sum of €9.95.
Nice.
So it's probably crap, or damaged because someone eBayed it me.
Amazing. Talking very, very briefly of Formula E. Have you seen it? They've been posting shots of changes to something, and one of them to the Gen 2 car, or if they're doing a Gen 3, I'm not sure. And one of the pictures has me mildly concerned.
Which one was that? Because if it's the one of the world's biggest diffuser that makes it like the Batmobile, I can't agree with you. I actually love the look of that diffuser, but please go on. My
worry is does that start to bring in some aerodynamics to their formula? And if it doesn't, and apologies, I have no clue because I have about as much knowledge on aerodynamics as I do on waistlines. So if it doesn't mean anything aerodynamically, then I'm good. But my worry was that it was starting to look a little bit like a rear wing that actually could be played with, and if that's the case, that's going to potentially make the field a little bit more spread out and more difficult to pass. But I don't actually know the answer.
The reason they've gone for a diffuser and the reason the Gen 2 cars don't have a full rear wing is exactly the reason you're concerned about. The cars are specifically designed to be able to race each other close, and that's why the circuits are the kind of circuits they are. Partly it's like a USP thing, like races in the city centre, but they knew they would never be going to full circuits where you need the aero to maintain speed. Relying on just mechanical grip would be pretty daft, like Spa, for example.
Yeah.
A diffuser, at least, and any ground effect elements, that's what F1's been talking about toying with, right? Because you can't really disturb ground effect. And that's why it was initially banned, because, that and the fact that it made the car a billion times faster than everything else. But setting that minor detail aside, wings are affected by the wake of the cars in front, whereas ground effect isn't, and it's just sucking the car to the ground. And it allows for much closer racing. So when they slap on a big diffuser, I don't know if it's just aesthetic, but what it's telling me is that when the new powertrain rules come in I think it's a few years away, they're already toying with the levels of downforce that would be needed to keep the cars racy and controllable.
Right.
So, I don't know. I liked it. I thought it looked kind of good. And it's nice to see it visually differentiated from Formula 1.
Agree.
I didn't like the look of the Gen 1 cars, I'll be honest with you, at all. Gen 2 cars I love very much.
Yep.
It's a profound and deep and abiding love. Because they look innovative and futuristic enough for it to have a unique identity, but not so far that it looks ridiculous and like they've done it purely for that reason. You know, it still looks like a crafted race car. And one, created by engineers who know what they're doing, rather than, every time IndyCar dabble with aero kits and, little gimmicky things, it always looks like, how can we make the car look cool rather than how can we create a car that creates good racing?
Yes. Yeah. No, that's helpful actually. That's explained it much better for me. So no, I'm less concerned now.
Do not thank me. Thank the. If F1 and motorsport in general had like an honours system, like the Queen's Birthday honours, he would definitely deserve one. Mr. Lucas de Grassi, who has become one of my favourite motorsport personalities. I wasn't a huge fan of his as a driver, and he sort of seemed kind of forgettable in F1. But as an advocate for motorsport in general, not just electric motorsport, and as a source of knowledge, I think there's few currently active drivers who offer the same level of insight that he's capable of doing. And he's been so instrumental in Formula E from the start. He tested the first ever car. He helped develop the first ever car. He's sort of a fountain of knowledge on this, and he regularly answers fan questions. So definitely keep your eyes open for his stuff on Facebook and things, because that's where I get all this from. Rather than any inherent engineering knowledge, it's just he explains it. We did this because of this, and it's always an answer that makes sense. Which I appreciate.
10 more minutes of rain, then back to dry. Schnauzer. I did really like Lucas de Grassi when sorry, I do like Lucas de Grassi, but there was a particular Twitter thread that he done around circuit design that I found really, really interesting, and then that really helped me dovetail into Alexander Wirtz talking about circuit design on the Beyond the Grid episode that he was in. And it's interesting that they kind of have the same ideas and principles and stuff like that, and made me much more happier for circuit design. Although I must say, I am not liking the look of the Las Vegas layout. It looks like a cross between Azerbaijan and Long Beach, which doesn't actually sound too bad, but it's in a bad way.
Yeah, I was going to say, not in a good way, right?
Yeah. It's really weird.
There's some tracks in Formula E that I think need a rework and some reconsideration, but I don't know how involved in that process he is. I mean, he does seem to have a good eye for what would make for a good circuit, but ultimately it's down to like there's a much wider group of people making those decisions, I guess.
And the geography of where they go as well. They're much more limited, aren't they?
Yeah, but the fact they managed to get the first motorsport event in Switzerland for, what was it, 75 years? I think that's a big deal. And
that track looks weirdly nuts as well, with those massive hills in.
I think it's getting time for Inters, and I've pitted already.
It's not far off. I've just gone off at turn 2 very wide. Oh, yeah. What's it telling me for? Inters. I'm on to Inters.
Intermediates. Fuck it, I'm just going to pit again and get lapped. It makes it easier for me to chat. Like, there's zero chance of of points now, so
I don't know. This race is going to go all over the shot, a bit like that can.
yeah, but I'm already a pit stop down, and I was last, so
okay.
Pitting again feels a bit. But then again, you know, I was behind Hamilton, and he's not come in. I'm leaving the pits as you're coming in. We almost double stacked.
Ooh.
What I will say is the car feels immediately better, so I don't know why everyone else hasn't stopped.
Oh, they're coming in now. Magnussen and Bottas, 2 and 3. Bizarre.
I hope they finish like that. If I can't get points, then I want it to finish like that.
Oh, we nearly crossed the pit lane. Yeah, some of them are going round again, so it's now Perez and Hulkenberg on softs tippy-toeing round behind me.
Well, hopefully this allows me to catch up to the back again, but I'm not confident. Mainly because I'm not very good in the wet in this version of the game. But let's see if anything can be achieved.
Yeah, they're going slow.
Let's crank up the ERS deployment. Why don't we talk a little bit about our very own team, who finally announced today when they're rebranding.
Yeah!
And showed off their new logo. Which is not a new logo, it's Scuderia, in the same font it's always been. And then the AlphaTauri clothing logo. So, a bit of a lack of imagination there, guys, but I'll let you off, whatever. I'm trying to figure out, though, what colour scheme they're going to go for.
It's interesting because that logo has no colour in it whatsoever, and I was hoping that that would give me a bit of a tip-off, because if they're going to go for a complete rebrand, like a load of their clothes on that brand look proper gothic,
Twatty.
Yeah, twatty, gothic, miserable, cut to a stupid cloth. So I could see it being quite a freeing one, where maybe they put in one of their weird experimental liveries, and I would be happy with that, but I would also be quite sad because I really like how the colour of Toro Rosso currently is as I take a trip into the gravel.
Yes, me too. Honestly, I expect quite a muted and minimalist livery. They use a lot of khaki and greys and stuff in their clothes. I actually bought some AlphaTauri clothes the first year that company started. And it was expensive, but it was a lot cheaper in those days. Like, it didn't have what it has now, like €500 shirts and stuff. But initially their stuff was quite good, and they've gradually become more pretentious as the years have gone on. And this is only the third year of the label, right? And now it's all hashtag People of the New Sun, and really wanky clothes that when I look at it, I was like, who is buying this?
Is it just an Instagram vomit?
But the thing is, you don't even see much of it on Instagram, to be honest. It's not like, you know, hashtag influencers are throwing it around or wearing it, and I've never seen anyone famous wearing any of the stuff. Even their F1 drivers don't wear it. And I don't know. I don't think it's going to work for them the way it worked for Benetton, because, you know, Benetton's clothing was affordable.
Yeah.
I say was, because you don't see much Benetton stuff these days.
No. The United Colours of Benetton. Because I'd actually thought that the company had gone under until I spotted some stuff. So no, it's still going. But it's to me, clothing and motorsport, it doesn't feel like quite. Mind you, this is just indoctrination of seeing sponsorship from years and years and years gone by. But it's just not an instant, immediate fit for me. So I don't kind of naturally associate it. If they're trying to attract that so that it can then bring in a younger audience and all of that kind of stuff, if they're all wanting people to be pretentious and wear pretentious clothes, then they're going to gravitate to Formula E, because they're also going to be Save the Whales, so because they're the same crowd. So it feels like a bit of a mismatch there as well.
You two are psychic, like Beetlejuice. That's exactly what I was going to say. It's such a bad mix. Like Red Bull have got a lot of brands, you know, Red Bull Music. They've got their own range of eyewear called Spect. There's so many companies in that group that they could choose to push this way, and you know, if they're going after that younger audience, I hate to break it to them, but that younger audience doesn't have €500 to spunk on a coat.
No, especially that lot when they're all living in Shoreditch in London, because they'll happily spend £12 on avocado smash on toast, but because it's a plant-based diet. But it's no, they won't. Not unless, like, I don't know, their cotton is ethically sourced out of an elephant's anus, and they've replanted a tree for every person that they've sent something in the post to or something stupid. So yeah, no, completely agree. Silly marketing. Didn't realise they had a specs company as well. God, they've got their mitts in everywhere. It wouldn't surprise me if they also run a dentist outlet with like toothpaste, because that's what one of the chocolate manufacturers do.
Yeah,
so they've got both ends of the market. Love it.
No, I mean, Red Bull are actually very smart from a business point of view. I mean, they've taken a product whose sales can be up and down, and they've used the money and diversified the business into all kinds of different things. You know, record label, they own some TV channels internationally and in Austria. There's like not just Red Bull TV, but they own, I think it's Service TV. They have a glasses company. They have several different clothing companies. AlphaTauri is just the premium one. Record label, film studio, engineering companies, not just Formula One, but like general engineering companies. They own a hangar complex in Salzburg for like private plane enthusiasts, like all kinds of things. And they own, you know, racing tracks, stadiums, sports teams. It's a very diverse company, actually. And still privately owned, which is weird. Like, you can't buy shares. So, you know, good on them. Success story. But I don't think the AlphaTauri branding on the Formula 1 team is going to work to their advantage very well. And what's more, I honestly get the feeling that Toro Rosso, AlphaTauri, whatever you want to call them, I think it's the part of their F1 program they really don't know what to do with, especially now it's occupied by two drivers who are never going to be given a shot in the main team again. And their young driver pool has essentially all but dried up. And they've burnt their bridges in Formula E very, very comprehensively.
Yeah.
Because all three of the key faces of the Red Bull F1 program have spoken very ill of Formula E in the last 2 years, particularly Helmut Marko, who, for God's sake, why do they still employ him? I don't get it. The man is evil. Like, there's not another word for it. He gets like an almost sexual thrill out of just being a dick. I've never got why they keep him around. I don't think he reflects on the brand very well, and he's not even very good at picking drivers.
No, well, he's all right at picking drivers, but he's not very good at actually like keeping them in any way, you know, for sure.
Oh. Well, I mean, like he said the other day, and I don't know if it's bitterness or if it's his true belief, because it could honestly be either. He said, "Oh, I never believed Carlos Sainz had what it took to match Max Verstappen, right?" Which is firstly demonstrably untrue, because he did match him for a long time. But that also ties into what we were saying at the time, which is it felt like the game was rigged against him from the start.
Yeah.
So, like, he never really had a chance, did he, Carlos Sainz?
No, not at all. Not at all. Because you know that it would have been weighted in that way, because that's just the young people bitch and moan about unconscious bias. That's conscious bias from the outset. And he would have been brought on maybe from name and name alone initially, with a sniff of talent, and then chucked aboard, and then they would have put their eggs in one basket, as they have done and will continue to do. And nothing. I think that void will only continue to grow with the Albon, Gasly, Kvyat issue that they've continued, because all three of those drivers are highly competent. My jury is still slightly out on Gasly, but to show what he was able to do in that Toro Rosso when it isn't a car that's set up around Verstappen, I find very, very interesting. You can argue day and night as to whether or not he should be able to adapt his driving style and skill and all of that stuff, but it just shows, I think, how much that Verstappen has his hooks into that team. And I think it then also reflects on Ricciardo, but also Sainz, in being able to match and deal with that. Maybe the hooks were less in for Verstappen earlier on in his career there, but it was clearly set up to be the Verstappen show, and the fact that Sainz made it not be the Verstappen show, if you actually look statistically, I think shows just how good Sainz is, and that we're now reaping the benefits of that later on. Sorry, that was a really long rant.
No, but I there's nothing in there I disagree with. I mean, what I want really is a Carlos Sainz McLaren World Championship before Verstappen wins a title. Because Verstappen will win a title eventually. He just will. Yeah. And I have to say, like, I've gained a lot of respect for Verstappen the last 2 years.
Agree.
I think his season this season has been one of the best seasons I think a driver's produced in a long time. A driver wasn't walking away with the championship. I mean, I think he's grown and matured in a way that none of us really credited him with, although we all wanted him to do it. And he's committed to that team, which, bravo. If you're happy there, don't listen to your dad. Like, sign on. And he's extended his contract again in the off season. And like, fine, that sounds like a very well functioning and happy relationship. I'm happy for all involved. But they do have to be careful about hitching everything to the Verstappen wagon, because they could be caught out like they were when Vettel quit. And it can leave them underprepared, and I think they need to realistically be aware of that.
Completely. And they won't win a Constructors by it being so single dominant.
No, I agree. Although, honestly, I'm expecting big things from Albon this year.
I'm expecting better from Albon. I will retract that. He will still be number 2.
Yeah, but I think he'll be a lot closer. And honestly, I think he did fantastically well moving into that team the way he has. Grosjean blocking me, moving on the racing line.
Is he right at the back because K-Mags is still third?
Yes, he is.
Grosjean.
Art imitating life. Other less interesting news, Haas have gone back to their original colours. Some people were cheering it, but I don't know how you can cheer possibly the most boring livery on the grid.
Yeah, not a massive fan of it. It just looks like someone went to B&Q and got like a toolbox and was like, we'll paint the F1 car like that. It's really dull and uninspired for me.
It's just the epitome of the corporate logo livery, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's not even American. It's just vomit in a can.
So yeah, super bland. We repeat ourselves when we talk about Haas quite a lot, but definitely a make or break season for Haas, I think, and probably a break season, I would think. I am not totally convinced they're going to sign the Concord Agreement and sign up for 2021.
Ooh.
I don't know why they would. Because it's clear that they don't know what they're doing.
I think he is the least likely to sign, but that extends to people wanting to know what goes on with Formula One in general. And then I'd extend the he doesn't know what he's doing just to Formula One in general. And building and maintaining a car and signing a driver that he actually likes. So,
well, I mean,
by that regards, he'll sign up with 2 teams.
If you view the decision to keep Grosjean through that lens...
Oh, yeah, one more year and then we're off toodles.
Yeah, I mean, the pieces start to... Because the way Gene Haas has been talking, it sounds like he's been reconsidering entering Formula 1 for a while. Gunter Steiner obviously just wants to be in F1 so badly that, he's doing his best to put a positive spin on everything, but there's very little positive takeaway from last year, except that by the end of the season, they figured out that the car they brought to Australia was faster than every single subsequent version of the car. Which is the opposite of development. It's so opposite of development that I don't even actually know what the correct term is.
Regression.
Yeah, it will be, won't it? Instead of progression, it would be regression. Yeah, well done, Simon. Bonus Carol Vorderman points for you.
Oh, GG.
Yeah, it would definitely be a season to forget, except for the fact that they've probably still got bills to pay from last season, and he's made no secret of the fact he's in there to compete, and he wants to compete at the sharp end, and the team has pretty much continually gone backwards. Especially so in the last season. They are hitched to Ferrari in a way that's very difficult to unpick.
Mm-hmm.
And Sauber are back being the preferential partner. And they're sticking a chassis on... they're sticking a monocoque on running gear and chassis designed by somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
For use by other drivers for other purposes.
His whole business model works if Formula One continues to move towards customer supplies, so there's talk of it now being extended to the gearbox, and I think that things like that may sway him more towards the staying, because then it means that everyone's on more and more equal playing fields. I just think that Formula One differentiates itself because some of this stuff is done differently, and so I don't see it ever going as far enough to keep him sated, so therefore mean that he will be competitive beyond being top of tier 2.
I'm going to make a prediction here. I think for at least part of the season they may find themselves being outperformed by Williams. That's my honest hope. And not because... people always think I hate Haas. I don't. I honestly felt like last season was a long time coming. That's the season they should have had in their first year, if there was any justice in the universe. Because they... we can go back to the 2014 episodes. They undermined the integrity of the Constructors' Championship. That was always my problem with them. That they were a sign of either things to come or some failed experiment that would damage the sport. And I still believe it could be either of those things. I don't care about my 3-second time penalty. I'm 15th, Jeff. Because Formula E is the motorsport I'm least worried about. They managed to have all the car manufacturers in the world, plus a few privateers. The privateers have a chance to win. The racing's super close consistently. The championship is all shaken up and you don't know who's going to win what. Mm-hmm. Nothing about it is predictable. And they run a bizarre mixture of different diverse gearboxes and powertrains that are all developed in-house. That shows it can be done. And Formula One seems to be in this odd position of, I think, whichever route it takes, it's abolishing itself piece by piece.
Yeah.
Because if it standardises parts, then it ceases to be Formula One, just outright. If you can move to standardised gearboxes, there's even less incentive then for a works entry by a car or engine manufacturer, because it's not even a super beneficial R&D exercise because you can't tailor the running gear to optimize the output from the engine. So suddenly you're much more constrained in what you can develop and learn. They can't really go full electric, although there's been talk of it, because Formula E is the electric world championship, the credible electric world championship, the one with the strongest grid, and the one that's finally been given official status by the FIA, which basically closes the door to Formula One taking that role.
Absolutely.
Hydrogen fuel cell technology is way too underdeveloped for them to be able to commercialise it for racing purposes, and internal combustion engines are going the way of the dinosaur. And it's a lot quicker than I think any of us anticipated. If you look at the sales numbers now for electric cars, and also how much more viable electric cars were than just a few years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, people, when the Nissan Leaf came out and everything, I looked at it and thought, oh, I kind of like that. But then I saw the range and how long it took to charge, and I thought, okay, that's not going to be the one that breaks the market. But you look at the ones that are coming out now, and again, I don't want to just push Neo because I'm a shareholder, but Neo have essentially robotic swap stations, right? It's like a little garage on the side of the motorway. They're dotted all over China. That's like the test bed. You drive your car in through an automatic door. It's lifted up on a 4-post lift, and robot arms swap one battery pack for a new battery pack that's fully charged. The whole process takes 3 minutes. You drive out the other side, back onto the motorway, away you go. It's essentially as quick as filling up a fuel tank, right? Which was always the problem electric cars faced. But they also have an SUV with a 500-kilometre range, and that's seriously impressive. And then, you know, if you look at what Tesla are doing, I mean, Tesla are, and Polestar as well, they're both premium car manufacturers, so it's not for everybody, but, you know, Neo cars are much more affordable. You get stuff now from Renault, Toyota, Nissan. Jaguar have very impressive electric cars as well. I think it's not just Formula One's fault that they're not attracting new powertrain suppliers. I think it's just the way the market's moving. Yeah. And, you know, we're repeating ourselves. We had this conversation, you and me, like 2012, 2013. We already saw the way the wind was blowing. By then, Formula E was already announced, and I remember us having a conversation saying, well, either you beat them to it or you spend the rest of the time playing catch-up, and that's exactly what's happening. Don't want to blow our own trumpets, but we do tend to make some very nice predictions that tend to come true. We
do. We're getting a bit of a habit for that. Despite it being called the Failcast, we should be called the Predictorcast, I think, sometimes. It's
But I mean, it's the one question about the future of Formula One that I really struggle to form an opinion on, that I feel confident presenting as this would be my guess if I had to lay money on it, because I have no idea what they're going to do. And obsolescence for Formula One could come very, very, very fucking quickly, super quickly.
Which I think I sometimes think is one of the reasons why they're pushing some of the agenda of oh, that's weird. I didn't like sorry, I've not lapped anyone in an online league race like this, and they grey out, and I was getting very confused. I think that's some of the push as to, like, if we aren't going to be roadworthy, do we now try and push ourselves as an entertainment sport? And I think that's where the push for standardisation also comes from as well. But then you're essentially saying, do you know what? Off you go. And and there's something for me as well around, like, if you know you can't appease all of the fans who have got yesteryear glasses on going, this is crap, then you admit it. and just stop trying to appease that and decide your direction and go. The problem with Formula One, and this is intrinsic back to all of the agreements, the fact that all the teams have more say and they'll have less say from 2021, and that goes down to Ferrari blocking Toto Wolff from being able to join the FIA to help them make the sporting decisions, all of that kind of stuff. Like, it takes years to unpick all of that, but the world moves on, and then you become less road relevant, or less sport relevant. So then you've got all of that going on one side. The other side is that the world moves on, and so you can't react to all of these different changes. And so if you can't appease all of the dinosaurs, you need to break free and go, do you know what, this is our clear direction. And then people will know what they're joining, and then the audience will come if it's still something that they will want. This busy pissing about of half one full and half in the other and not really declaring your mission objective, so to speak, is half the problem.
Yeah, that is it. That's exactly what I'm driving at, I think, in a more circuitous way. They don't really know what they want to be, and they're trying to be everything to everybody, which you can never be. Because, you know, the hybrids they're a sticking plaster, right?
Yeah.
They're an attempt to keep more manufacturers in the sport, right? But the lifetime of hybrid power units is very, very short. It's already over. No one is going to be buying hybrid cars.
Yeah.
From pretty much now on, it's just not going to happen. Now, you know, charging times for full charge are down to like 30 minutes, and they're going to keep coming down. And then, you know, companies like NIO have the battery swap, which is essentially as much time as it takes to fill a tank. Hybrid loses its point completely. And, you know, even Ferrari have announced an all-electric sports car now. You know, them and McLaren were the ones that were really pushing hybrid in a sports car setting, and then Toyota were the ones pushing it in a consumer car setting. So I can't think of many other hybrid cars than really like the Hyundai Ioniq and the Toyota Prius. Aside from that, you didn't really see many hybrid cars, right? I think Honda had one or two. But they were either very, very efficient ICEs or they were all electric. And, you know, that's still the way it's going to be. So the question now really is what you say. Move towards greater standardization and, you know, almost spec parts, and you would definitely lose me as a fan. Some people think that's kind of a reactionary position to take, but for me, the battle between the manufacturers and the engineers is as important as the battle between the drivers.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see the cars compete as much as the drivers.
Yeah.
And it's not what I come to F1 for. If I wanted to see like drivers compete on equal terms, I have a whole bunch of series to watch.
Yeah.
And, you know, I do like spec series.
Because I think like Formula E, GP2, to a lesser extent IndyCar, because they actually are like the fastest on American terms. I think those spec series, but particularly Formula E, is showing that it's not ultimate speed that is required to put your name on the door to say this is the best racing that's out there because we're so fast. It doesn't need to be.
Yeah, I mean, and Formula E isn't really a spec series. They have a spec chassis, but I mean, all the running gear, like the brakes, the gearbox, the powertrain, that's all, you know, formula based, and everyone produces
that's a bad example.
Like almost everyone produces their own. I mean, I know by that definition, a lot of spec series with more than one engine manufacturer is not spec, but no, I mean, and it wasn't a bad point you were making, including them. It's just my point is what it shows is that you don't have to lock everything down.
Yeah.
To have great racing.
Yeah.
It's just F1's problem is that there's no powertrain that they can make themselves the home for and for it to make sense, unless they become more of a spec series in general, and they revert to V12 and V10 units, make it about the spectacle again. And there are companies that still have viable V10 and V12 units. Ferrari, Lamborghini. Lamborghini released the V12 car a few years back. I mean, they won't do that again. But there are those engines on the market. And you say, okay, we need companies to develop racing engines that are purely motorsport enthusiast engines that have no application in the real world. So maybe you get companies like Neil Brown Engineering, Cosworth, Mugen, and you say, we'll pay you for the power units. So the sport, out of its shared kitty, pays them a contract fee each year. And, they're still incentivized to compete, to develop the engine. But they can't just decide to pull out because it doesn't make commercial sense for them.
Yeah.
And then the sport has the innovation that it needs to attract people and spice up the show. And, it has a spectacle of loud, gas-guzzly engines and very fast cars. And you recapture the spirit of old Formula One, but without the reliance on car manufacturers. It's a difficult model to make work because suddenly you're losing a lot of works funding, a lot of interest from manufacturers in running a team. But it opens the door to privateers again, and as long as you've got the eyeballs, then the sponsors will come back, and maybe it becomes more commercially viable. Because also, aside from the contract fee, the teams would still be paying for these engines, but the engine costs will be very, very small because they're subsidised by the sport. And I actually think that could work, but you just have to accept that this is F1 in almost like a stasis pod. It's like a time capsule for the future. You maintain the pedigree of the sport and the connection to its history, or you go the other way, and you only part standardise or even don't standardise at all and try and usurp Formula E's crown. But I just don't think it can be done at this point. I just don't think it can be done.
It's a very strange one. And another interesting one where it was, I think it was Mark Priestley was talking about it, and it was actually basically changing F1 into a efficiency race, as in like you are given all of these different parts and you have to make it as an efficient engine / power units, whatever they go down, as possible. But I think that was because he was busy doing a talk at BP that day, and he was trying to show how big, in a world where everyone's going fuel is bad, actually what are these companies going to do about it, and how can they promote themselves back into motorsport and not be villains anymore, if that's even a viable thing. I just thought that was an interesting twist on it, but I can't remember exactly what you said.
Particularly BP, but a lot of these fuel companies, but especially BP, are investing in next generation power tech.
Yeah.
They're moving, like British Petroleum literally changed its name to Beyond Petroleum because they knew they had to move beyond it. So they're investing in a lot of different divergent technologies to find what's going to become their business going forward. It's the same as you're seeing in the tobacco industry, right?
Yeah.
With them all starting spin-off companies to decide, okay, what are we going to do next? Because people aren't smoking anymore. And once vaping is finally extinguished, which it will be because there's a whole bunch of problems with it,
thank God.
They're going to have to do something else, right? And these companies are aware of that, and I think that should be embraced and encouraged.
Yeah.
So I think he did the right thing by pushing that message to them. That said, I just don't know how you could reconcile that with a Formula One anyone would want to watch, because they tried going down the efficiency route to some extent already by penalties to disincentivize engine changes to reduce waste, tyres that need to be very strictly managed, and all people did was complain. I mean, I kind of liked it because it eventually, once they loosened the leash a little bit, resulted in high-deg tyres that they had to pit more frequently to change, and that gave us divergent strategies. But one would argue that having 5 compounds of tyre at a Grand Prix is already inherently wasteful, so I don't think there's an easy solution. But for sure it's going to be an interesting 5 years, because it could be, and I'm really not saying this for shock value, I'm saying it because I'm genuinely thinking about it. This could be the last 5 years of F1 as we know it.
Yeah.
Well,
on that bombshell.
yeah, congratulations, sir, on your race win and resuming your position at the top of the Drivers' Championship.
Yeah, Spammy didn't score a thing. He was second last, so that was
helpful. But he deserved it for hitting me. Verstappen also failed to finish. I'm languishing in 6th. It's been a hell of a season for me. I had the pace, though. I was the second fastest on fastest lap time after yourself. So if it hadn't been for that unpleasantness, it might have been all so different.
You'll get some luck soon, no, mate. And I'm hitting some of the tracks that I'm much more problematic at, so I think the swing may start to happen. You're better in the second half of the year.
Well, what I care about really is us winning the Constructors' Championship, and we are well on the road to that. 22 points clear now of Mercedes. The bulk of those points coming from your good self, but still, nevertheless, between us, we are on course for our best ever Constructors' finish. We've never finished higher than 3rd.
No.
And only once did we reach 3rd, and prior to that, we never finished higher than 6th, I think, or 7th.
Yeah.
And this is going back to when there was 12 teams as well. So.
Yeah. Windcast, love it.
Well, thank you to everyone who joined us. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I know I did. And we will see you in 2 weeks' time.
We will do, when I think we might have had a couple of car launches by then, or at least be about to have them, so we can do some livery discussions, maybe start thinking about predictions and stuff like that.
It's my favourite time of the year. It's my favourite time of the year, all this.
Yes.
New cars, predictions. So join us then.
Yeah.
Have yourselves a good weekend.
Take care.